Hello and welcome to another Lawful Remedy. I'm Richard Vobes and with me is Karen Dodd. Just going to move your microphone a little bit closer to you so we can hear you. And on hand we have 5 Cleverclogs for another of our wonderful Lawful Remedy, giving you some, not legal advice, but sensible, common sense, lawful knowledge to your questions. And it's a live show, and if you want to ask any questions, then please do in our chat, which is there. Put in capitalisation, oh dear, capitals, the word or the hieroglyphics question, Question. I'm sure it is an acronym for something, but I haven't worked that bit out. And we're going to have a fun 2 hours until 8 o'clock. But don't wait till 8 o'clock to ask your questions. Get them in as quickly as possible, but don't worry about keep repeating them because we don't always see them immediately. The lovely Julia, who is unfortunately not in the studio, so no disembodied hands coming into the show. She is working remotely, and I believe I've got to keep my phone open in case she's got questions.
The messages, yes.
So Julia, I have you on my EMF device radiating my brain, so it's all good. So Karen, firstly, how are you?
I'm good. I'm hot. I'm saying it's a very hot day today, isn't it? But I'm very well. Very happy to be here. Again, just feel like a job.
It
does feel like a job. As I'm commuting to work, and the traffic is horrendous. So it's taking me longer each time I come. It's taking longer, but it's well worth it to be in your company and to get this information out to people. Yeah.
Yes.
So I do enjoy it. I love coming here and sitting next to you and listening to the questions on the panel. So all is good. Thank you. Fantastic.
And hopefully everybody can hear us and see us, and it's all working, thanks to the wonders of the ye olde internet. So, Karen, shall we introduce our lovely panel of... I'm still on you. Introduce our lovely... Oh, actually, it's a bit close, isn't it? People don't want to see right up my nose.
No, they don't. I can, and they really don't.
Yes, they really don't.
You
Thanks
don't want to start Richard's nose. Yeah, we've got a full-on panel tonight, and we nearly had 6, but I think we've got 5 fabulous people. We've got a newbie. Should we go straight to the newbie?
Let's go to Newbie's Corner.
Newbie's Corner. We've got 2 ladies joining us.
I wish I had jingles for this show, because that would be quite fun now.
Well, you can make them...
Newbie's Corner.
So Newbie's Corner, we've got the lovely Callie Spell. Hello, Callie. Carly.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. Lovely to be here.
Yeah.
Lovely to have you on. I met you back last year at the Eli's Everyman's Shines, and then we bumped into each other up in Burnley, I think it was.
Yeah,
when
that's
we were
right.
at the cricket club.
I wasn't there.
No.
Stalking you. What it is.
And we had a lovely gig, gig up there. Lovely Julia was there, and we all played cricket in the afternoon.
That's really nice.
And did a bit of truthing on the side.
Yeah, as you do, a little bit of truth. So, Callie, do you just want to let the audience know a little bit about you, your background?
So I've kind of been awake for about, I don't like saying awake because an awake is a party for the dead, but aware, shall we say, in gradients for the last 20 odd years or so now. So, but the last 4 years since the pandemic, even more so. And I fell into the journey of the law through commercialised liens and learning about the common law first, and then getting into an understanding about commercial process, etc. So it's been a journey for me as much as it is for everybody else, really. And I am most certainly learning as I go. But I love it. I love etymology. I love breaking down the words and the language of the fraudulent, deceptive legal system and the spiritual angle of it, and kind of shining a light onto that. And I run a platform called the Dark Matters Network, which is an educational resource platform. So we kind of have home ed to crypto education to inner child healing to we had the home ed Zoom last night to law legal to debt education. So, and it's free to join, and that's kind of what I do. And as Richard says, I get invited to speak at varying places. And I know David Adelman. I've met Dave, allegedly Dave. The Daves are going to get a little bit more confusing as we go.
We've got
and then
3
David
of them
from
on tonight.
SPLS, we've been chatting. So it's just great that everyone's kind of coming together. And Karen, of course, I've known you for many years now. So it's an honour to be here. And if I can add anything to the conversation, I shall. But yeah, thanks for having me.
So we've got Callie, and then we've got another lovely lady, Gill. Hello, Gill. Gill Edwards. She brings in happy stories because she's had some positive stories, really, haven't you, on some of the systems that you've been fighting. That's the other Gill. Have you got the other Gill, Richard?
I have, but I need Gill to say something before she pops up on the screen. There we go.
I always say I'll just make the tea. I'm not as experienced as the other people on the panel here, so I'm just here to demonstrate that anyone can have a go at this, really. I've got my pile of notices, or some of them I've been doing this week. So I've done a couple of PCNs this week, and I use the notices from various sources, but obviously make them my own as well. And I've done lots and lots over the last 3 years, and particularly I think people are interested very much in council tax, and I've actually found that one the easiest because I think they're so fraudulent. It's actually quite easy to challenge that one. The PCNs, the council ones, I find harder because they're so persistent, but basically nothing much has happened. In 3-4 years, I've only had like 3 debt collectors, and they're very easy to get rid of. So everybody's just gone away.
And which we want them to go. Well, certain people we want to go away, don't we? We don't want everybody to go away, but the baddies.
People I've been noticing.
No, we don't want everyone to disappear.
Not everybody. Don't want us. We don't want you guys to go away. We need you.
We need the panel.
We do need the panel, and also Gill's going to be hosting the Roadshow at East Sussex at Hope in East Sussex on the 9th of June, aren't you? Because you can't be there, Richard, and I'm not there, so Gill's going to step in and host
we're gonna show you all the dates and stuff in a minute. Yeah. But first,
and then we've got AAA. We've got the 3 DDD. I keep saying A. I don't
Glad
know
you
why.
said DDD and not DDT, because that's been banned, hasn't it? We can't have DDT anymore.
Has it another thing that's been banned?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it a chemical or something you spray on people?
You used to spray it on the crops, didn't you, DDT?
Right. I think people still do, don't they? They just give it another
name. I think now they snort it or something, don't they, for a bit of light relief. That's what I do, anyway.
Alphabetical order, they're all beginning with D. So who's first on the screen? We've got David Adelman. Hello, David Adelman, the People's Lawyer.
Hello. Hi there, Karen, Richard, and all the gang. So I think I have introduced myself before, so I'll keep it brief. My priority these days is to give people the bigger picture. So whereas people like Carly drill down into words and Dave goes through certain procedures, and I'm really focused to complement the work that those guys do. I'm focused on giving people the bigger picture, which is just to remind them, without being too glib about it, that they're actually sovereign. And if they think they're anything else, it's a bit of a mind trip and they've been tricked. So my remit these days is to undo the deception more in a psychological way than in a technical way, because that just feels right to me. You know, we've got to get people to realize that they've been tricked on a very fundamental level. And when they do their countermeasures, like responding to this and writing to that, that's all well and good, as long as they're demonstrating to themselves that they're sovereign.
Brilliant. And I think a lot more people are, I don't like to say they're waking up, but they are coming on board. A lot more people. I'm getting emails and things are happening that we're not all hearing about, but there is a lot of movement in this as we share the love, spread the word.
Yeah.
So great to have you, David Adelman. And then we've got another David. We've got allegedly. Are you David? You're allegedly Dave, aren't you?
Allegedly Dave.
Yeah, so maybe you're not. Hello, allegedly Dave.
Yeah, I don't go by David because that's what my mum calls me when I do something naughty. So
David.
There's not much to say about me. I just I spend my time helping people for free, and I actually focus on the even bigger picture, right? So what really life is really supposed to be about, and the powers that we have in this world. So I don't really get to stay in the realm of dealing with paperwork and stuff, but yeah,
you enjoy it, don't you? You turn it into a lot of fun, I think, which is really important, as do you, Richard.
I've just got to ask,
because it's a game.
It is a game.
It is. I would love to ask. In a nutshell, you say the bigger picture about what life is all about. What is life all about? Because these days I'm getting more and more confused, Dave, about what life is about.
It is a game. We live in a playground. The only thing is that right now the bullies have taken over the playground. Right? So the game has changed somewhat. So that's it. It's still a game.
It's still a game.
And it's a chess game, but it's more than that, isn't it? I know we are moving our pieces all around and protecting our castle with the knights, but it's much more fun than that. I think you have to have a sense of humour with this, else you will go under. So it's really important. So lovely to have you with us again. And then we've got our third David. So David, as in uncut. David G, welcome and thank you for coming back on the panel. I think you did visit us a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So it's really great to have you with us. You've got to speak, and there you are. Oh, where have you gone now? Okay, Sovereign.
Yeah.
Oh, you got your website behind you.
Thank you for having me back. It is an honour, a privilege. I am the governor, the founder of a website, SPLS Pro, where we teach equity and trust. We expand on common law. I'm into the etymological side of things. Words are important, and we help people for free as well. We teach others how to express trusts rather than ask them for unreasonable amounts of money. And we've got a team, not just myself, various open and private, public and private access points, domains. And we've been doing this since 2015. We stumbled on the triangle window of trusts and then started to help show what common law is comprised of and how to utilise that, retain rights. And I'm very much looking forward for tonight's show, and thank you very much.
Well, it's fantastic to have you on board again for a second round.
Round two.
And the questions, I've just looked down here, the questions are coming in thick and fast. Julia's sending me some, and I can see some on the screen in front of us. But before we get to your questions, ladies and gentlemen, let's just run through, because a lot of people have emailed me and they said, oh, you haven't got on the details of all the things. And I've tried to post some on my community tab of where the Roadshow is going to be, but also they will now be in the live. Now that we've finalised it, they will be in the description of the live shows. Not at the moment, because I have to wait for the live show to finish, but in previous live show it will be there. But we'll show it on the screen if I can do a little bit of clever stuff here. So take us through them, Karen.
So the first one is going to be, next weekend, isn't it? I think in Glastonbury, I think it's on Sunday. So Eli, who runs the Shine seminar, he's got this one together. This is the first one. I will be there hosting it, and our Cleverclogs will be David Adelman, Dean of Buxton, so he's coming down a long way. Martin Geddes, who we haven't managed to get on the show yet.
I have interviewed him, actually.
Have you?
Oh, but over a year ago.
Right, okay. So. It'd be great if he came as one of the Cleverclogs, but I think this is only the third time he's coming out to present, so we're quite honoured. And then we have Pete the Hat, who has been on the show.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. That's next Sunday. And then we are going over to East Sussex to the Hope community.
Which is near Battle.
It is near Battle, exactly. Brilliant. And
Battle will be on.
The Battle will be on. And we did have our Uprise and Shine conference there the other weekend, and somebody just said it was amazing, so thank you very much.
And this Saturday, actually, there's another event going on
there. And somebody's going to be there hosting that. You're going to be, it's a funny night. Some bold explorer.
I don't know who it could be.
It's you.
Yeah, it might be.
It could be
In fact,
you.
Yeah, that's the day after tomorrow.
It is, which is the day before the day after that.
Yeah, and then before that, there's something else.
There is indeed.
No idea what that is.
On.
Anyway, sorry about that.
What fun this is going to be on a Saturday night.
Yeah. 9th of June, that one.
That's the 9th of June. So hosted by Gill and the Cleverclogs. We've got Chris Coverdale, who has been on here. He's the one that really supports the don't pay council tax because of the war thing.
Yep.
David Adelman, good old David's coming back to that one. Garrie Fraughen, who has been on the show as well. And Tony Rose, who has also been on the show and is local to Hope. So a great bunch of guys. And then we move up north. We're going up north to Buxton, where the water is. So you and I are going to both be there.
Oh, that'd be nice.
That will be nice. That will be fun. So that's on the 23rd of June. And we have David Adelman. David, you are a star.
We are overworking the poor bloke.
And we're not paying him. David, have you got a beam me up Scotty kind of bit of equipment or something? That's the wrong David there.
Yeah, I've got an evil twin. Yeah.
Who travels around.
Well, actually, the image that we can see, because your left shoulder's disappeared into the San Francisco Bay there, so you obviously can magic yourself up all over the place, which is brilliant. We need you all over the place, so well done. And then we also have, going back to Buxton from memory, no, I don't have to remember, it's written down, Dean of Buxton, because Dean is in Buxton. And we have the lovely Callie Spell, who is with us tonight. And Sovereign Pete will be joining us. So again, another great bunch of clogs up in Buxton. And then
will they be wearing clogs?
They will. That's part of it. I'm going to give them. Everybody that comes has to wear a clog and make a noise. Make some noise. Can you imagine?
Oh yeah.
And then the last one we've organised so far is in Hull, even further up. So I'm going to be there. Richard, you can't, unfortunately.
I can't make that one. My pedal car doesn't go that far.
Your pedal car.
I haven't got David Adelman's ability to just transport.
Beam me up. Well, I'm actually picking Sovereign Pete up for this, for Hull and Buxton, because he hasn't got wheels. So I'm going to somehow pick him up and take him up to these events.
Well done.
Sovereign Pete Wilson, who has also been on the show.
Yes, he was on this afternoon, actually.
I thought I saw something come in my inbox. Yeah. Oh, well done. Right, another busy person.
Oh, golly.
Garrie Steel, who has been on the show a couple of times, and this is his neck of the woods in Hull. And that's allegedly Dave. Sorry, nearly missed you out there, allegedly Dave, who's on the show now. So great, we got great Cleverclogs, and we really need these to keep going, don't we? We need to get these roadshows. I don't have to be there. Richard doesn't have to be there. We need somebody to sort of try and bring it together. But if you are interested in doing these as a listener, if you want these guys to come, I can help organise it, because it's so important to get this information out and get the audience and you, the public.
And I would try my best to be at the future. Not that I'm really in any importance.
Yes, you are. No, oh my God, you are. You bring it together.
I know the guys are the clever ones, but if I can, just to roll up and just
we love you. People love you being there. Yeah, with your briefcase.
With my briefcase. Yes. Anyway, so that's the roadshow. That information will be in the description, and you'll be able to come along. We do. The more the merrier, and bring your questions. I don't know how you're going to get people to at the beginning hand some questions.
Maybe
or hands up.
Hands up. I think what we'll do, we'll start off with the Cleverclogs to do a quick intro, 5 minute who they are, what they are, and then we'll go into questions. Yeah, with the clogs, a bit of
dancing with clogs. I think that would be
around the tulips and all that. It will work out. It always does. And the tickets are reasonably priced. Other than the Shine ones, the Eli's ones, he's charging a little bit more. But the rest, he's charging 20 in advance, 25 on the door, and we're charging, I can't remember, 18. I think 18 if they're booked 18, before, and then 20 on the door. But the details will be, if you email me, you'll get all the information. First question?
Yes,
okay,
I've got a number of questions.
Taken us, 15 minutes. So the first one,
yeah, let me do the one I've got from Julia sent in here.
Cool.
From Thomas, and the question is, has anyone got any tips on how to teach this sovereign stuff to the younger generation, as I'm not having a lot of luck when I try, as they think I'm mad? And they could be right. We're all a bit mad. It's a mad world. If you want to answer the question, panel, just stick your hand, wave for a brief moment, and we'll see you and bring you on. So if you've got any hints and tips, allegedly Dave, I think, is first on the picked on the post.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of obvious stuff and very logical ways of looking at it. That you just keep it nice and simple. I'm trying to think of something obvious. It's not coming to me. But
what about a game? Somebody needs to write a game, don't they, for them to play on screen?
One of the games that I did, because I have given a homeschool sort of lesson on common law, and one of the games is is answering questions with questions. Okay,
answering questions with questions.
What do you mean?
Yes.
Well, I said, because you are, I mean, kids do that though, don't they?
They do.
I mean, they do that all the time. Because they get the answer and it's like, okay, but why such and such and such and such?
It's a little trickier than that, but, because you've got to make it seem like it's part of the conversation. Right. So, answering questions with questions is a tricky skill to learn. Yes, kids got a bit of an advantage, but when I gave this homeschool talk, in the break, all the children are out on the out in the garden, and they were just practicing it. They were just having fun.
Oh, fantastic!
And afterwards, the parents were saying, I can't get my children to wash the dishes or anything because I keep going. Am I obliged to do that?
I don't know, are you?
Yeah,
that's very good. That's
it.
Very good.
David, the People's Lawyer, I think you were going to answer some of that as well, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, we are up against it, and that the last comment that Dave made highlights the problem is that that there's no vernacular in the media, in books, cartoons, films, videos, Instagram, whatever. There's no vernacular for sovereignty. So when a police officer taps a character on the shoulder, the character just capitulates and, you know, yes. and takes it's a fair cop, or runs off, or shoots the cop, or whatever. So we need a character somewhere along the line to actually say what Dave has just said. Am I obliged to cooperate? And that will shatter paradigms.
Can you imagine any TV company doing that? I mean, it would have to be on the internet, wouldn't it?
Yeah, basically. So it is a conundrum. The Generation Z are immensely captured with their heads inside gadgets, and the gadget is run by Google, and Google doesn't want you to know anything. So it's a problem. It's a real problem.
That's why we need somebody very clever to make a game like a Grand Theft Auto, but, you know, that they all want to watch, because they all are addicted to their screens, aren't they? So put it out there that way.
David G has his hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, something that I want to take a moment or two to answer. So for those Christians and we'll say religious types that are wondering about sovereignty, you will find in various editions of the Bible, sovereignty is mentioned around about 200 times. If you look at the maxims of commercial law, you will see in those maxims biblical annexures with the precepts of the Bible quotes, sovereignty, truth, sovereign, affidavit. So when I say we teach and educate you about common law, true common law, that's interesting to note. Sovereignty, from my point of view, and I've been doing this nigh on 10 years now, SPLS Pro is sovereign, Lawfuls, procreators.community.com. So yes, it's about government. If you need governing, if you remember when the scamdemic was on, people were wondering whether or not they could visit their families and if they were allowed to make certain journeys. Can I do this? Oh, Mr. Hancock, Mr. Boris. Well, it's about governance, good self-governance, about conscionable behaviour. We know all on this show, on this panel, and yourself, and the viewers, the scribes, I would imagine, right from wrong. We learn that in the playground. Sovereignty, good self-governance, without having the need to be able to be told, you know. And for references, as I've said, those previous references, the Bible, biblical, Mosaic, Abrahamic, in that world's greatest story, the maxims of law, and with regards to governance and your actions, the deeds that you execute. Thank you very much.
That's very interesting. I was thinking just then, you know, because this is aimed at, the question was saying, how do you get youngsters to do it? And I think that whole thing about asking as king, teaching kids, you know, what would a king, how would a king is the boss, how would a king be in lots of different situations? Because presumably a king doesn't have anybody above him other than his maker.
Yes.
So I don't know if that helps, if that sort of... David Adelman.
Well, I'm going to give another answer, which I think a lot of people would expect from me. As author of a book on it, School No Place for Children, it's get them out of school. Because at school, the agenda is to suppress their natural instincts, to make their own decisions, and to be themselves, to rob them of authenticity. And an example of this is two sisters were pulled out of school during the mask insanity by a deputy head and his missus, who I both know. I know the whole family, actually. And so they kept them at school, at home, permanently, and found that when they were in school mode around the kitchen table, they found that the girls were putting up their hand to ask for permission to go to the toilet. So... what do we learn from that? Well, we learn it's worse in schools than we think it is. You know, if you have to ask for permission pretty much for anything, what chance have you got with a police officer or an enforcement agent or HMRC 10 years later? So step one, find a reason and find your tribe that will help you look after the boys and girls, because, as the Africans say, it takes an entire village to raise a child. So get them out of the danger zone, and then we can discuss the debriefing, the deprogramming, and it's called deschooling, to actually stop their, give their head a wobble so that they can come back to sanity.
Simone just asked very quickly, what is David's website? If I remember rightly, it's thepeopleslawyer.com, is it? Or .uk?
Nearly, thepeopleslawyeruk.com.
There we go, Simone. Good one for you. Carly has a response.
Yeah, just following on from David as well, we did a home education Q&A with a guy called Richard Hart. So we run these lives for free so that people can kind of come into the network and learn more about how to do it, basically. And I know from traveling up and down the country, and I know David, I call them the family, and there are, we won't say children, because children is chattel in legalese, but our sons and daughters who know themselves as facts and not fictions. I know a 9-year-old boy called Joe who says, I am full cold and Joe full stop. And he knows himself to be a fact and not a fiction. So the church, and church comes from the Roman goddess Circe. They say, give me a child to the age of 7 and I will brainwash them, basically. We know that's when the beginning of the 7-14-21 of the trust is passing us by to declare it. So it is that kind of, like David says, get them out. It is no place for our sons and daughters.
And it's,
well, they are the John Connors. They are knowing who they are, and I call them the little John Connors of the next generation. They do know. They are starting to know and ask questions.
Brilliant. Gill.
I also think that there's a big gap in the market for games and books for the children. I've not yet come across a history book that gives an alternative viewpoint of the history that they're taught, and it's kind of on my radar to look for people that would do a sort of a fun way of with illustrations for the history, the alternative history, the history that we're learning now, knowing that most of everything that we've ever been taught isn't true. Books, I think, because I read to my grandson a lot, and I tell him things. Well, I don't, he obviously, they love dinosaurs, don't they? For example, they love dinosaurs, kids, especially boys, and they, so I just say, well, some people think that they've never actually found any dinosaur bones. What do you think about that? Asking the questions, and he says, oh yes, they did exist.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Because teacher said, I said, well, they don't necessarily know themselves, so I kind of talk to him that way. But books, I think, would be lovely with the, different.
Trouble is with all these things is the powers that be seem to control all of that media, don't they? Mm-hmm. And the people who might write those books would have an audience of, again, talking to the converted, their own children and like-minded. It's reaching the kids who have no knowledge. I think you can publish anything
you want on Amazon, though, can't you?
Well, it's true. It's true.
Amazon, yeah.
You need the marketing to go with it. Allegedly, Dave.
Right. Well, two quick things. One's an offer. If somebody has a homeschool group and they want to be taught this stuff, then I've done it a few times before, including with my own son. I taught him a few things, which he actually put into effect. So if they can get a group together and I've got the time, I'll come and give the talk. And the other thing was about the game. Actually, I have an idea, and I've actually storyboarded it out and everything for a game that will teach people not just how the law and legal system works, but basically how to wake up and see through what's going on. But I can't get anybody to make it. So if anybody out there wants to build a game, which
is it a board game like Monopoly?
Oh no, it's a 3D first person kind of game.
Computer game.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think that's what would work. Well, if there's anybody out there who wants to help allegedly Dave and take that offer up, that's great.
Right, let's move on to the next question, as we are racing through the time.
We are indeed.
Have you got a question?
Yeah, I have. I've registered my name with Company House. What is my status now? Asks Alan Webb.
So
registered my name with Company House. What is his status?
When he says registered as a limited company, presumably a dormant company. I mean, I've had people on the show talking about this, and that it's a vague. I don't know. Allegedly, Dave.
To my mind, it's unchanged. Yes, you can do a few, tricky things. Say, oh, you've used my copyrighted name, and now I can. But at the end of the day, the Matrix has you. As soon as you were born, they created this whole fictional thing, and they're not letting go of it. So what I've noticed over the years, people have said, "Oh yes, you can copyright your name, and you can take control of your straw man and all this stuff." But the system hasn't changed their reaction to it. So I don't think it does very much.
Kylie.
Yeah. I presume, obviously, he's speaking about the limited company process that Carl does at Hornseywood Academy, the Truth Talks. So, because we are all as fictions classed as under, the United Kingdom Limited, which is, a fictional corporate entity, it's a state. So an estate is a condition in a contract. So it's all legal. It's all in their jurisdiction. So what Carl does, and I'm no expert on this, so you would have to get Carl on, but when you take yourself out of that jurisdiction, what you're doing is you're actually docking your ship. Because we're all classed as pursers. This is why we've got a P in our passport. It means purser, which means slave on a ship. So what Carl is saying is you're basically using it as a defense. Like it's a form of trust. Like everything is a trust. So you're docking your ship. And because England and Wales Companies House is actually England and Wales, it's actually classed as being on the land. You then become the director of your ship. So instead of them controlling it and you're just the slave on it, you're kind of taking control of your legal fiction to a degree. Now, the process is a little bit more complex than that. But in essence, you are kind of changing a status in an effect because you're making yourself a director of that company, of that fiction. You're still in a commercial world, I suppose, but you're creating that distinction and you're creating that defense to that system. It's still kind of a trust because it's all trust because the system just runs on trust. It's trust or promises to pay. That's it. So in a way, you can change your status through that process. But again, like with any process, and again, it's not my process. Carl's just a good friend of mine. It's something that you do have to follow through right to the end, and you have to kind of, do it correctly. But there are benefits to it. You can change your status in your passport to a C over a P, which means commander instead of purser. But again, you've got to kind of make sure that you kind of go all the way with the... What I tend to see is people tend to do a process sometimes, and then they get kind of stuck with it, or they get stuck in their mind with it, and then they tend to, not kind of follow it through. But in effect, you can kind of... There's benefits to it, but you have to make sure you're doing it right, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Very good.
So there we are. That's your new status. You are the commander.
Yes, Captain.
Like Commander Bond.
Commander Bond.
Whereas I'm only Brooke. Right, so that was a lame joke. Let's move on to another question. I've got a question that Julia sent in, which is from Sue Humphreys, and the question is as follows. He says, looking at his phone, is there any way of getting round paying back COVID bounce back loan left with debt even though company now closed? Anybody know about the COVID? Carly?
Coolie.
And the gang.
I don't like to say I specialise in anything, but if I do, and I just said do, but if I do anything, I do.
You're not going to do a do, are you?
We don't do duvets, no. But I do debt. So it depends, again, on the case, without having a look at it, where that debt's up to, because a lot of these debts get sold on. So whether it's still with the original lender, I mean, at the end of the day, these are all private companies, so we can find their DUNS numbers, we can find their VAT numbers. If it's an unsecured debt, obviously far easier to deal with an unsecured debt than a secured debt. So I'm assuming that's exactly what it is. So again, what we do is we use commercial process. We DSAR, we use SAR requests, we get the information. Again, it depends if the debt's been sold or not, but we ask questions, we get them into commercial default, we get them asking, we ask questions that they don't want to answer. Of course, they've never loaned him anything in the first place. It's his signature as always that creates that credit. So there are certainly ways that we can kind of attack it depending on what it is. I mean, I've just started a debt course that's in the network, so that starts on next Friday. But if he wants to come and have a chat with me, I'm happy to kind of go through it and see where it's up to. It just depends on the individual case of where it's up to. So say like student loans, a lot of the student loans from early 2000s all got sold off. So again, you might get something through the mail saying that it's, that this is the student loans company, but a lot of them are debt companies careering around as the student loans company. So again, it just depends on where it's up to and what it's at, depending on how I would attack it. But you can certainly attack it. Yeah, definitely. It's doable, of course, like any debt, because it's not real.
Yes, I suppose it's just knowing the process. Yeah. A quick answer to Matthew Miller, who says I asked a few questions a question a few weeks ago. Apparently it was written down to be answered. Can you just write it again? It is a bit potluck in this because of the way it all works and people are trying to answer their questions. We're doing our best to get to it, so this isn't like the BBC or any of these people with a gallery of people. We've got the lovely Julia doing her best, and we're all doing it live. But
just rewrite the question like you said.
Just keep posting it. We don't mind. I know people sometimes get a bit funny about people posting the same question, but it's the only the chat thing just goes up and up and up, and it's difficult to see. Was there anybody else who wanted to answer that thing about the bounce back loans?
Yeah, allegedly Dave.
Allegedly Dave.
Yeah, a debt is a debt is a debt. Actually, the way that this works, no money was actually loaned to anybody. So the same process, comes into play. If it was sold on to somebody else, to another company, then there's this idea of the novation agreement. So in order to sell it on to another company, there has to be this thing called a novation agreement. If there is no novation agreement, there is no transfer. So it's gone essentially. But again, if you don't know things like that, then they can get away with it. If it goes to a debt collector, well, essentially you've won, because the debt collector just bought the debt, and again, they don't have what's known as a deed of assignment, so it's invalid. So just the same process you'd use for any so-called debt.
Brilliant. And it's funny enough, in the show that was out this afternoon with Peter Wilson, who's one of our Lawful Cleverclogs, he was talking about exactly that thing of using DSARs to question the deed of assignment, and it was a very comprehensive video, so do feel free to go and have a look at that. Thanks, Dave.
And can I just say, because if the debt has been sold to a debt collector, because there's no contract, that's why it's irrelevant. Is it as simple as that?
Pretty much.
Sorry, Dave. I thought you were asking me. Sorry.
Pretty much, because the debt collector has just bought the right to chase the debt. Not really. They've just bought this debt and they're pretending they're acting for whoever it was who had the debt, and so they bought the debt for pennies on the pound. And they're hoping to bully you into paying, this debt plus their fee on top, right, and make a massive profit. They've got no right to do any of that. And as soon as you adequately challenge them, they disappear.
Good, love it.
That's what we want.
Another question.
Jill. Yeah, Jill.
Sorry, just one thing, that the any so-called debt, because we're obviously in a debt-based society, can be paid off with a promissory note, but you have to, through the Bill of Exchange Act. But it's another process that you have to learn and study.
Yeah, Richard, you said something about that the other day, didn't you?
Yes, I've got somebody coming on the show, I forget who it is now, who's going to tell us about promissory notes in an hour-long interview. But I did something I mean, I'm not yet ready to say quite what I did. I mean, I did mention it on a show because I don't want to tell people what I did and then it fail and people copy it because of the influence of the show and then find it all goes pear-shaped.
All your fault.
Yeah, so until I've, know that it's really gone away, either by them telling me or indeed just it's been so long, 20 years, and it hasn't happened, then I'll share the information. Sure. Hopefully a bit less than that time.
I'm just listing it now, so I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, do. Let us know. But yeah, we do have somebody coming on to explain that. But yes, brilliant. And because ultimately £10 notes, so we covered this a bit last week, didn't we? Yeah. These things we think of money are just promissory notes, and you can basically make your own.
There is another hand up, I think, or should we move up? There's 2 hands up.
I just
David,
wanted to add, if I could, don't buy debt. You see, a lot of these debt companies, they buy data, so that's why the SAR is so important. They're actually buying bulk data, so it's never assigned, like Dave said quite correctly. There's not a deed of assignment to it. So when they push us and then we get into affidavits and we push them right to the end to an M1 claim, they ain't going to win because they can't turn up with the things that we've asked them for, because you can't buy debt, you can't buy a fiction with a fiction because it never existed in the first place, you see. And of course with promissory notes, things like that, we as creditors, because that's who we really are supposed to offset and discharge that debt because we've got these credit accounts. And say with your utilities, for example, that bank gyro credit, that's a credit slip. They used to be called checks, and that's actually the instrument to discharge the debt, but we just don't know how to do that. So you can utilize postal mechanics, but like Gill says, then you are into, because the courts are corrupt, you are into going into, and you've got to enforce it under the Bills of Exchange Act, but we can do that. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be balancing the books as creditors and beneficiaries in an equitable sense,
And what does N1, you mentioned N1, what does that mean?
So when we do this commercial process, and what we're doing with a SAR or a DSAR is we're revealing this concealment. We're asking for them to provide the information, because when we as beneficiaries and data subjects, the Data Protection Act is so important, because basically a breach of data protection, our data is our property. So when, say, Barclaycard are passing your data to Bob at Moorcroft, who's the CEO of Moorcroft, they're not assigning it legally. It has to be executed by deed. So if they're not doing that, they're just ringing up and passing your data over. Yes. So they're in breach of the Data Protection Act, they're in breach of GDPR. So we can utilize those tools, which are very powerful tools, because they're saying they've got documents that they've not got. We don't have a contract with them, and like Dave says, you've bought the debt, well, thank you very much, but they're not buying the debt, they're buying the data, and that's a data breach. And a breach of data protection is a breach of trust law, and a breach of trust law is one of the greatest breaches of law. So then when we go to the full claim, we use affidavits, because it's a commercial maxim. An unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in commerce. We create our own law. They're never going to do, they have to do one back or rebut ours point for point. They're never going to do that under penalty of perjury. So then we go for an M1 claim and we give it teeth and we turn the game around.
Hang on. Sorry, that N1 claim, that was the question that I've heard that term. I just wanted to know what an N1 claim means.
So the N1 claim is when we then fill that claim in and we take them to court, basically.
Is that a court? Is that a court document, an N1?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Yes. Right. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you.
In our favour, by the sounds of it.
In our favour.
Yeah.
Fight them back. Turn the game around.
Yeah.
We kind of turn the game back.
Brilliant.
Like that one. N1.
N1. Whoa. And David G has got his hand up.
Okay, you have to, there is a way and a means of telling whether or not the debt has been sold or whether the debt is being handed to a debt collection agent. So we need to actually reiterate what's just been said, because not always is the debt sold. So there is a way and a means of telling whether or not the debt has been sold or whether it's a debt collection agent. And like Carly and David have said, under the data protection regulations, you would consider unauthorized transmission of personal data to a third-party officious intermeddler agent as such, a malicious communication under the data regulation legislation. So to help you out, to cut to the chase, there's a reference to every debt, every loan, every credit system that happens as a reference. So you would need to look at the collection agent recovery letter that's been sent after you've defaulted on the original loan agreement, credit, whatever it is, amount, and you look at that reference. And to help you all out, if that reference is the same, then it's a debt collection agent and an agency that are in operation. If that number has changed, there are particulars, let me mute this, there are particulars to this. I'm paraphrasing and summarising, but I'm pointing you all in the right area on how to determine whether or not it's an agent or whether the debt's been sold. The data regulation is important as well.
So when you say that the reference number has changed from what?
So when you get the original credit agreement, loan, whatever it is, it will have a reference. Yeah, and then when you're looking at the collection agent recovery letter, if it's the same, then it's an agent. If it has changed, yeah, this is just summarising because I'm aware of the time constraint.
Yeah.
Then it's a new reference, it's a new case, it's a new file, it's a new account. So therefore, it would have been more than likely. Remember, disclaimer, caveat: I'm not here to give legal advice, financial advice. I'm aware of monetary mechanics. I'm aware of like everyone on the show is. So please do not try to hold my information given today, anyone, under that caveat and disclaimer there. But I'm just merely trying to provide and duly inform. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So just to summarise what you just said, so I've got it clear in my head. If the reference number is the same as, say, on your original loan that you've had, or whatever it is that you're defaulting on, then they're acting as an agent for it because the reference number is carried on. Whereas if they've bought the debt, they're changing the number completely or slightly. But it's not the same number, so that way you can check it. That's
it. In a nutshell, that's it. There are more particulars to that, and if anybody wants more information on that, then I will make that available at a later date, or we can come back and tailor. Perhaps you can have a show dedicated to a certain topic, and then we can focus on that rather than these random questions that are quite sporadic. Yeah,
that is unfortunately that's the nature of this show. Is that the questions will be a bit sporadic, but that's quite. I mean, but that in and of itself is quite an interesting thing, because whether there's because I learnt this from Peter Wilson this afternoon, whether it's an agent or whether they've bought the debt gives you a different route of remedy.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so you wouldn't need a deed of assignment. You wouldn't be asking for a deed of assignment if it's an agent working on behalf of the originator.
Yeah, there are different ways to handle it. That's why I'm pointing out it's quite critical, poignant that I point this out to the viewers, and as the channel, as the panel chats about this, then that needs to be said. Thank you.
Yeah, no, brilliant.
Excellent. That was a good one, wasn't it? Like that one.
Let's have a go to David Adelman. Sorry, David.
Yeah, a couple of things. I have a very simple attitude to debt. It's the same attitude that I've got to viruses. There's no evidence that they exist, and there's no evidence that they are transmissible. So you have to put people to prove that they exist and that they are transmissible or transferable. And the thing is that what they're working with are things called statements. Now, a statement has no effect in terms of creating a debt. It's simply evidence that something has been paid. It's just the latest accounts. It's just it's an entry on an accounting system. If you want to create a legitimate debt, you have to serve a bill, or an invoice for services rendered.
Yeah, is there a difference between a bill and an invoice?
Well, an invoice might be a precursor to a bill, but a bill can be signed under the Bills of Exchange Act. You can sign it off. Right. So they could amount to the same thing. Maybe Carly or Dave might know more about this, but they are legitimate. They evidence contractual obligation, whereas the statement does not.
Yeah.
When you have a meal, Richard, you get a bill at the end of it. When you go into a commercial area, you get an invoice. I think public and private, kind of. You know what I mean?
Well, Just to go, I mean, I don't mean to go off on a vague tangent, but I did ask Peter this, and he didn't quite know the answer. He probably does, but he didn't want to tell me.
No, why should he?
These companies, these bailiffs, the debt collectors, the enforcement agents, when you look at their big company, they're all VAT registered. But when they go with their bill, you never see what the VAT is that they're charging you, even if it's 0 rated. And it seems to me that their bills or invoices or whatever can't be honest or truthful if they don't show the VAT, even if it is 0 rated. Because I thought if you're a commercial limited company or a corporation, you have to show the VAT. And they never do. We demand £752,000 or we'll punch your lights out. But they don't tell me what the VAT is. Punch me lights out, that's fine. But what is the VAT? Is that anything worth pursuing?
I think that's a classic symptom of a lack of validity, that they're not offering you a bill, no services have been rendered, no consideration offered, because for contract, as well as, obviously if you're not the original contracting party, you need a deed of assignment. But leaving that aside, none of the elements of a valid contract are present, and the lack of a VAT invoice or VAT rating is a giveaway, is just a dead giveaway.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. And Stan McDonald says in the comment, the bill must have the VAT on the thing.
There you go.
So thank you, Stan.
You're learning, aren't you, Richard?
Yeah, I am. I mean, all these things. Sorry, who's that?
If I could just add as well, this is why they always want us to get direct debits and have debit cards. You'll see that a bank is so keen to replace your direct debit card for free, because every time we ping our debit cards, I mean, debit and credit are the same things, and there's two sides of the banking ledger. So every time we ping a debit as a creditor, we are abandoning credit. And that goes on the securities exchange. So every time we ping, we're abandoning our credits, and those all get swept up by the banks. So that's why, if you get given a true bill, like David said, well, a creditor, a beneficiary of that trust, which you are, you can discharge that bill, which is why they'll always give you a statement of account. And like David said, you won't, it's all about liability. You see, they won't take liability for it. And liability, as we know, means the ability to be lied to. So they're never gonna do it, because they're always gonna perjure themselves. Wow. They've got to that point, or sign anything. Nothing's ever signed,
Yeah, no, it isn't. David G.
So to close down as well, monetary mechanics. Professor Richard Werner is a good port of call. YouTube video renegading. We've been promoting that for some years. The Bank of England, it's not a bank, and it's nothing to do with England. If you look at a £1 note, £10, a promissory note in your wallet, in your purse, whatever, you'll see it does say, I promise to pay on demand the sum of £10, written by the chief cashier, okay, and it says promissory notes, promise to pay. We are using debt notes in a Bankruptcy Act 1869, the 1900s. Think about the removal of gold standards, all right? So the language and the vernacular is of this, to paraphrase, that we can only effectively service a debt. Yeah, we are willing and able to service a debt. When you speak of debt, money used to be backed by bullion of sorts, silver, gold. There is no reserves, money, decimalisation, removal of gold standard, the Bankruptcy Acts. Professor Richard Werner will validate all that I'm saying on this for you. It's a bit of a crash course. I'll slow down and take my time, but you also need to look at the 1882. Look, how old is that? 1882. That's what man said. That's as real as it is. It's archaic technology. It's archaic laws. It's in service still because it suits the oligarchs. It suits the aristocracy. It suits the banking system and the high frequency market traders as such. So this is the rising of knowledge of wisdom which can no longer be suppressed. So you are looking to transfer via endorsement, and you are looking to discharge the charges because they were much like the courts and the police charges, Cali etymology, water, electricity, charges, charging a battery cell, you're imprisoned in a cell, the language, the lingo, the etymology, it's dark, it's just macabre, but that's the way it is. So back to close down, bills of exchange, private remedy, you won't get anybody. People ask me for evidence of such, and it's like, well, it's private, you can't come into the public and talk about private remedy, it's a private affair, you can't verbally speak about this in a public gallery, it needs to be done via paperwork, you need an understanding, you need to research and go with somebody that can help you and guide you and find out the facts of the matter and look at the language, and then you can look to do this. You can't just take a template, put some stamps and signatures and hope that it'll work. All right, thank you.
Thank you, David. Wow. A lot to take in there, David, but thank you so much. We should move on
to another question.
Yes.
I think we should.
Have you got one handy?
No.
I've got one.
I have got one.
You've got one.
I've got one. That was right at the beginning. So from VGTC question, hi, I received a careless driving letter, but the supposed incident happened over a year ago and they're not giving me any information regarding it. What should I do?
Good question. Anybody fancy answering that? He says, pressing the wrong button.
Need a bit more information for that one.
Okay, yeah. So VGCT, if you give us some more info, what sort of information do we need?
Well, okay, so was it a copper stopping them and telling them, that I'm going to charge you, or they get something in the mail?
Yeah.
What was it?
Okay, just careless driving letter. Okay, it could mean all sorts of stuff. Okay.
I mean, in the old day, did a bit of careless driving, the police would sort of say, can you just be a bit more careful?
Yeah, with your
we've
careless
got your
driving.
number.
Yeah,
and on you go. But now, any...
They want the money.
Yeah,
so
every
follow the money.
misdemeanor. I've got a question here. So this is from Will, and he asks, the Great Taking by David Webb, that the laws now in place, so I'm just reading it as it was typed, that the laws now in place so that when the financial system crashes, banks take all the spoils, we lose all our property. Does common law let us bypass this? David G.
I would say yes. You can't ring fence assets in a commercial sense. Disclaimer and caveat number one. But for private, like the Taking Control of Goods Order Act, for somebody that's having a debt collection agent, or even in the worst case scenario, a bailiff coming to their door to take goods for the servicing of a debt because you're in fault and default position, then we don't have goods. I don't have goods. I have possessions and I have belongings. Goods are something you take to market. What else do I need to say? So to answer that question, answer the question, David, put your property in trust. Think about, I'm not telling you, but it's a good idea to use trust. A trust, there's many types of trust, a testamentary trust, an express trust. What trust have I got now? A discretionary trust, which is to do with life insurance and mortgages and property and things. So you need to know, when I say trust, I'm not talking about a legal trust, I'm not talking about an ecclesiastical trust, I'm talking about private trusts under England and Wales, because again, there's different jurisdictions of trusts and there are many types of trusts and they do different things for different purposes. So equity, when I talked at the beginning about common law, understanding common law, this is not for circumnavigating your duties and obligations, but to look at what the elite and the aristocracy and the elects do, the modern day Nazis, if I may. Then basically, offshore foreign trust accounts, what you hear them talking of. There's a film called Laundromat that you might all want to make a note of. Antonio Banderas and Meryl Streep, that's my dyslexia coming in. Meryl, a brilliant film. The Big Short is another one to evidence what I'm saying about the creation of mortgages and how banks and things set themselves up. So you want to protect your property for future attack of public and private commercial areas. Think about trust technology and
David, last week we actually had Trina, who was she was telling us a lot about trusts actually last week. So some of last week's show, obviously it's difficult to sort of pinpoint any specific thing, but she was very much talking about trust.
And Stan McDonald says here, you can't put your property in trust when a lien is on the property, as a lien will trump the trust. Is that true?
So there you go.
I'm not going to answer all of that. All I'm doing is answering the first question, where you want to privately protect your property, then think about trusts and doing that and splitting the title, and any help anybody may need, I can offer that.
And that was really about, can common law stop the the great taking, which is this sort of the globalists trying to grab all of our assets and stuff.
What can I just add something?
Of course.
It's not that common law will stop it, but it's people who realise who they are that will stop it. This is a numbers game. I mean, one genius who knows everything about everything is going to be able to do nothing, because it's just one man or one woman, and they'll get swamped with the tide, in a tide of commercial bankruptcy. But 1 million people, men and women, who know who they are and are prepared to come together and shoulder arms, will simply apply sovereignty in a practical way, in a humane, compassionate way. And agents, like in the film The Matrix, agents will just be sent packing. And that's what it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about sending the agents packing and finding peaceful, empowered ways to do that. Now, if that involves a knowledge of common law, and I'm sure it does, one of the things that it involves, but equally it involves people re-establishing what used to be called a sense of community. So if we cannot re-establish a sense of community, we are piddling in the wind. And that's so that's as much a priority. They're both equally important, knowing common law and trust law, contract law, yes, but being able to stand together with other people to apply that knowledge.
And partly, I suppose, this is what this show and others like it are trying to sort of educate enough people so that we can stand in a united front on all of this. That is what we're trying to do. Moving swiftly onto a question here that came to me by email, and this is from a lady called Faye, who says, I'm another one avoiding sending in a self-assessment for my partner. It seems that it's a voluntary tax. Could you look into this, please? I'm sure I'm about to get into hot water. So we've sort of covered this in previous shows, but people coming to this all the time, naturally. What do we think about the self-assessment? Is it a voluntary code? And is she, Faye, likely to get into hot water filling in the tax return?
Or not?
Or not? David,
can I answer that one?
Of course you can.
Well, self-assessment, I mean, that's a confessional. That's just exhibiting guilt and the need to self-harm financially.
Yes.
So the first thing to look at is this sense of guilt and need to self-harm. It's a kind of inverted virtue signaling. So, oh, look, I'm a taxpayer. Aren't I good? So you have to have a look. You have to have a look at the obligation. There can be no obligation to do anything positive. There can be no obligation to write out anything on a piece of paper. Because what are they going to do if you're in breach of that? Come round and hold your arm down and push it so that you fill it out? No. So there's no obligation to fill out any forms ever. However, you may have reasons to want to do that, and that's different. So the only people that have ever been successfully prosecuted for tax have decided to fill out the forms and sign them. Because the one thing that that makes you exempt from prosecution is the lack of your autograph or signature. The judge will just throw it out. So no one has ever been prosecuted on unsigned or uncompleted tax forms. And I have a module in my course, the People's Lawyer course, called Taxation is Voluntary, because it is.
Brilliant. Many people will be very thrilled. Don't fill in the form, don't sign it, and then what can you do? Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. I've got another email question which I would like to... Oh, sorry, was Dave... Did you have your hand up, Dave?
Okay, so I think Callie had her hand up before me, so...
Oh, I beg your pardon. Callie.
I only wanted to add, it goes back to trust again, if people have got assets really, and understanding legal and equitable title, because when you hold legal and equitable title, then you know it's like what they're saying with the WEF. You know, you own nothing and be happy. But I hate to break it to everybody, you don't own anything anyway. It's the universal maxim: he who creates owns. So when you split the title, then you have the beneficial use of, and that's actually a stronger position in equity because you have what's called a chose in action. So the beneficial use of, and actually in certain trust, depending on what kind of trust, it's actually a breach of trust law to disclose who the beneficiaries of that trust are, basically. So as an example, and it might be a bad example, whatever you think about Andrew Tate, but he actually always comes online and says, you know, I have 18 Bugattis, but I don't own them. You know, I have an 18 million pound mansion, but I don't own it. I just, you know, I've got a yacht. I don't own it, but I have use of it. And that's how the elites, or the elites, you know, we don't want to give them that kind of power or title, but that's how they do it. Like with the Bills of Exchange Act, these loopholes exist, and trust law exists because that's how they do it, and they create wealth and asset, and you know, and move it around, because trusts are special purpose vehicles to move around assets as well.
Dave, allegedly Dave.
Yeah, I just okay. Now I've just forgotten what the question was.
happened to me earlier twice today.
Self-assessment, Dave.
Oh right, yeah. Just quickly, if you pay tax, then you're a taxpayer. It's as simple as that. You start to, but if you've been paying tax, you can use my favourite phrase. Actually, it has come to my attention. That's my favorite phrase. Yeah. And then you can start saying, you know, using what Chris Coverdale talks about, and I talk about using council tax. And that is, it's come to my attention that HM government and HM armed forces are engaged in genocide, and it's against the law for me to you know, contribute to genocide. Yeah. So you can go that way. Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say.
Can I just add that there are so many ways to not pay tax, and I'm carefully avoiding the word avoiding, because we're not avoiding anything. We're just standing in our ground. The HMRC do not have a leg to stand on unless we give them those legs to stand on. So it's all down to us.
Right.
That's simple.
Yeah, makes sense. Love it.
Thank you, panel. And David G.
Just on the back of what David A has just said, tax avoidance and tax evasion, one of them is illegal and one of them is legal, and I'll leave it there. If you do take note of Laundromat film and The Big Short, you'll find all out in those. All right, but yeah, fantastic.
Fantastic. There we are. Left us wondering.
I'm going to make a note of those movies. I'm going to watch those on Netflix later, Richard.
Excellent. Right, I've got a slightly long-winded email to ask the panel. And it is quite long-winded, so we'll just see. But people do email me, and then they get a bit disheartened if it doesn't get mentioned. I don't want to mention my name. This is something. You know, this is how the email goes. They sent me a £2,000 bill for council tax. They, whoever they are, outlined what I'm paying for, which I didn't consent on the letter. I'm paying the council for disability. So they didn't consent on the letter. I'm paying the council for disability, firemen and police. Council get a lot. It's insane. Called them, wouldn't answer my question. They had the wrong details as well. Spoke to a Damien on the phone. He was very rude. What are you calling us for? They also want money for time. I didn't live at the address as renter, said the landlord. This is. I did read this before I put this up. Obviously, I was drunk. Asked them about DSAR. Didn't know what that was. He said you can apply for it online. You can have a DSAR online, mate. Know what I mean? He said pay money. Obviously, if you email in the show, you know, just
put some commas in there.
Yeah, and a few capital letters. would be helpful. Asked them about detail, they didn't know, and that you said you apply. He said, pay the money or we'll send a summons. That sounds like them, though, doesn't it? I said, from the court or from the council? Good question.
Good question.
He put me on hold for a while and then came back and said, from the court? I said, OK, so if I ring the civil court and the criminal court, will they have my details ignored? I'm not working at the moment and a single person. They wanted to know what money I get. I didn't get around to mentioning the war. It's just the way it was written. No offence, please, to the writer if you're watching. I didn't get around to... They don't like it, Upham. Mr. Mannering. I didn't get around to war, but in other words, you know, they're paying for the war and terrorism and all that. We know what you mean.
Yeah.
And he said... he kept saying, I'm going to end the call now because of your questions. I'm going to end the call now. Sent me a code, then said type evidence. There's no real question in that, I suppose, but if anyone's got a comment on that. David?
Yeah, can I just... Okay, I like to keep things simple. That since we don't know the precise circumstances, I'll just offer two possible ways to go. That the man should ask whether he's being given a choice. And if the answer is no, then refer to the Modern Slavery Act 2015, Section 1, as defined in Section 3, subsection 5, which is criminal exploitation. So that's one way to go. It'll certainly give them something to think about. The other way to go is to offer to settle their bill, but give them an admin invoice for twice the amount that the demand is for. Because we are, if we're treating ourselves as sovereign, in other words, like as valuable, if not more valuable than a barrister who charged £3 a minute, sorry, £3,000 a minute, or whatever, then, or some incredible amount, then a four-figure sum is perfectly reasonable because, you know, you're dealing with a highly complex matter, your time is valuable, and it really is, it symbolizes this turnaround that's taking place as more and more people do this 180, and instead of regarding themselves as miserable serfs that must pay for everything, we're beginning to regard ourselves as, I'll try and find another word for instead of sovereign because it's overused, as a valuable being, adding value to the planet just by breathing. And when my time is, when a claim is made on my time, that value must be translated into something that will eventually send them packing.
Creditor is a good one.
Yeah, that's another good word. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that.
I've got two questions.
You've got two questions. Just before you get this question, this very important comment came in from Dale Summers, who says, my wife got scammed the other day by a woman called Anna, who got her to invest in a snake farm in Brazil. I'm afraid, anaconda. And
Okay,
yeah, we're all thinking, how do we answer that one?
Sorry,
it's the way you tell him.
It's the way you tell him. Very good. Is that on the chat?
That's on the chat.
Who sent that in?
Yeah.
Anna's husband.
Thank you very much. But by the way, that's not an invite to put a million puns.
This show's going to change, isn't it?
But a bit of light relief is quite fun.
So a question right at the beginning here was from iFunction. He's just received a notice of liability order from the council, giving me 14 days. Does contacting the council and informing them that the liability orders were scrapped in 2003, I think it was, work?
So that's a good question.
I've tried that one. I haven't heard from them yet.
Have you not heard from them?
No.
Well, there is no real liability forever, is there? They never, there's not been a real liability order since, I think, is it like 2010? They only ever have the application.
Three.
Yeah, 2003.
Is it? Crikey, right? Yeah. So they only ever have the application for one. We know that it's all coming from the council. The bulk processing this stuff in private rooms, etc. So it depends if you just want to be able to challenge the legality of it at every point, because at every point the council tax just a terrible fraud. You just having a withdrawal to do it, really.
I suppose with this particular question, they're saying they've got 14 days, and so they're trying to cut to the nub, I suppose, and by saying, well,
I would ask
legally.
to see it. I would ask to see it because if you're getting a letter off the council saying that they've got a liability order, well, that's not the liability order itself.
Yeah.
No, it's just
Saying you've got a
notice.
notice of a liability order. Yeah, exactly. It's a notice of a liability order, like the great, late Baron David Ward kind of taught me. That a notice of a liability order isn't a liability order, just like the vice in my shed, isn't shit on a stick or whatever. It's the
The
same
vice
thing.
in your
Bad
shed.
He was obsessed with the vice in his shed. But,
that's
but
a
you
bit
kind
of
of
a quick one, isn't it?
Oh, I see. Sorry, I thought you were talking about your own
The
vice.
vice, what, like drinking alcohol at midnight?
Fantastic. Allegedly, Dave.
Well, what's got to be remembered is that the council is like a robot. Yeah, all they can do is respond in the same way over and over and over again. If you tell them something that's true, like the liability order was scrapped in 2003, now they'll just continue with their process because what they're expecting, right? And they've got a good right to expect it. They're expecting that everyone is a muggle and has no idea what's going on. And some people have picked up a template on the internet and they're trying their luck, right? And fair enough. That's essentially most of the people out there. But there are an increasingly large amount of people who do know what they're talking about. So the point is that the council are, they've got no other choice but to act like robots and just go through their process step by step.
Do you think that, I mean, you just mentioned there that a lot of people do know the thing, and by people continually and lots of different people challenging them and saying, look, you've got your process, but actually just check the law. And if enough people do that, like David Adelman was saying before, that they start to sort of go, actually, do you know what? Either we've been found out or we're wrong.
I don't think we've hit saturation point yet.
Right.
But, there are, we're getting there because there are councils that are, going into bankruptcy because they're not getting money from the council tax now.
Yeah. David Adelman had his hand up a few seconds ago. David.
Yeah, a couple of things on notices. We didn't have a pandemic. We had a notice of pandemic. So that's what I want to stress to people, that whenever you're given notice of something, you're not being given the real thing. And it's an offer to contract, which is why you contract a virus, because you're offered a virus, and if you agree to it, you're in contract. So the other thing is that there is a recent court precedent called, which involved Bristow and Souter against
Leighton,
in the freedom movement.
Leighton versus
Leighton. It's not. I don't think it's nailed down on notices of liability, but it's to do with tangible paperwork. If there is no tangible, lawfully endorsed paperwork, then they fall short, and they can't pursue, they can't enforce, and they are, as Callie has just hinted, running the risk of a major fraud claim against them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I can see David G is waving his hands around like a windmill. And then we'll come to Gill. David G, windmill man.
Come on, I keep that one. I hope that sticks. Right. In answer to... my mind's a scary place. To the question, which was, if I contact them, I forget now. If you could just quickly repeat what the initial question was. Richard?
The question was, if I tell them there is no liability order, it's been scrapped since 2003, will that help me?
Right. So the key word is is notice. A lot of the panel have mentioned the word notice. So when we mention contacting them, we're not writing a letter. We are having dialogue and conversing with them. So my trust, how we in our circles move is as thus. This is a notice. It is not a letter. It's served under the doctrine of notices. So we operate and we recognise, not that we're in the society of the legalese, the lawyers, practitioners, prostitutes, lawyers and academics as themselves, licensed legal professionals, but we recognise through our acumen and research and discovery the pre-action protocols, the civil procedure rules, which is known to the Freeman law of the land, Magna Carta, etc. movements as due process. But due process is the term that's thrown around without people knowing what it is. So we use notices. We don't write letters. We don't make telephone calls. We don't use emails. We construct a notice and we contact them. Now, what kind of notices would we use? In this instance, I would be using a conditional acceptance notice served under the doctrine of notices. So that when a controversy arises, a legal controversy and a charge against your person, it needs to be dealt with. So you can either accept it, you can deny it, or you can challenge it in the form of a conditional acceptance. And what that does, it conforms to the practice directions, the civil procedure rules, the pre-action protocols that need to be recognised. Not that we follow them or I promote them or that I endorse them, but these are the prerequisites of what is at play. So when we contact them in answer to that question and to help that guy out, scribe out, these are the ways in which we roll. I can't tell you any more on that because I want to let the panel, because I've just ignited some memories and given you all a clue now, because nobody actually mentioned the processes and which to do and how to do it and how to conform, but without accepting liability. You're not saying yes, I'm guilty, I will bend over and pay. You're not saying no and fighting it and causing further controversy. You're keeping clean hands and you're remaining in honour. You're satisfying all the, because what this does, in essence, it stops any fines, fees or forfeitures being applied, and then we can move forward in the game and we can hopefully get the claimant in a position of fault or default, and then at the end of it we're leading them down a predetermined path which will railroad them. As allegedly Dave said, they are like robots. They're not legally trained. They're not lawfully trained. They have no qualifications. Right. They're administrators. They're agents in office. And unless you speak to the correct officer, agent, principal, etc., then this is the kind of thing that happens, and you'll end up in a position which is known as stalemate or deadlock, which in common law of England and trust and equity talk is called equitable estoppel. I yield. Go, Callie.
Fantastic. Yes. Callie has got
yes. Trained. Yeah.
If I could just add as well, because it's a bit of a silver bullet, and liability orders, as we've said, it's not an order from the court, and there's a thing called the definitive court record, which is a copy of the court register. Now, because we know it hasn't actually come from a court, you can DSAR the court and there will be what's called no memorandum of entry. If there's no memorandum of entry, then there's no adjudication. The liabilities are not being produced or sent from a court, and you can prove it by using a SAR request to the court. Because they will have no record of it. It will not be on their memorandum. I mean, I did this document and people can have it for free. They can either email me, and I did a video on the council tax, and it's all in here, all the bullet points of how you can kind of pin them down and put this into, like what David said, notices, into SAR requests, freedom of information requests and the like. And that's the way that I would go about it, like just following on from David.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Gill, I think, would like to contribute.
Just to add to that as well, there's also, which might be useful for some people, there's a Telegram group called Boycott Council Tax. And on there, one of the administrators has put a guide to English law. So you can find it in the files, and it's called V1 2 guide. That's V1 2 guide. So anyone that's on Telegram can look for Boycott Council Tax group, and in there's a whole section on council tax, and I used that template as a base for my rebutting the notice of liability. So I did one to the council and one to the court as well. Never heard anything more from that.
Ah, there you go.
Just a useful source as well as
absolutely. All these little sources
all helps. Every little helps.
Salt and peppers are all very, very handy. I just want to ask a question to the panel. Anybody? Well, I'm going to ask this to Callie because she does the word etymology stuff. We often talk about contract, but when something contracts, does it not shrink and diminish? Is that part of the evil thing?
Is it a con?
yeah, con is to swindle, basically.
Yes.
I mean, in simple meaning. But yeah, this is why we are in their system anyway. Obviously, we are born really, and that's why we are king for a day, yet fool for a lifetime. Because when we are born, we are a son or a daughter of the Creator, and then we are birthed or registered into their system. This is why we, the female, when she births, is called the birth canal, and she contracts and is delivered by the doctor, and so on and so forth. I mean, David's I love my etymology, but I have to say David's the whiz, so we have to pass this over to David, because he can wrap it for us, I believe.
Great,
it was just when to swindle.
Yes, I was just thinking, because when things contract, they go down. Anyway, have you got a question?
This is why you get taught as well. This is why children are taught, and that's why you get taught law, because it's being pulled to its limit. Something that's being pulled.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So it's breaking point. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. You should do a whole show on that. Words. There's a comment. So there's a comment here. I think it's for allegedly Dave. It says, I've lost it. To Richard. So Richard, can you ask? I guess allegedly Dave. It's from merely Dave. Dave will recall Pondy. I would like to contribute. So I don't know if that's about the game, and I don't know.
Pondy.
Pondy, yeah. Do you recall Pondy allegedly?
Yes, yes, a guy also called David.
Merely Dave, yeah.
It's now merely Dave.
Pondy.
But he says he wants to contribute, so I don't know if this is about the game or anything. I don't think this is a good thing or not to pass that on, but he's popped up a few times, so we have passed that one on. And then Stan McDonald says, question, can you convert a statement into a bill and write it off under the Bill of Exchange Act? I bet Stan McDonald knows that, but he probably just wants it put out to the panel if anybody wants to answer it.
You can request a bill from these companies. I used to do a Zoom that showed people how to fill in these bank gyro credit slips, etc. So you can request a true bill. It's well within your rights. Whether you'll get one or not is a completely different story. But what you can do is you can, like I say, it's just about offsetting and discharging, like Gillian said. You want to learn about promissory notes, the bills of exchange, etc. The difficulty is we've had success with them in the past, and now it's getting more and more difficult, because what you're going to have to do is then go and enforce that promissory note, or with the attaches to that, whether it's a gyro slip or whether you're just using a promissory note for whatever that debt is. But we can create those. We are the creators, you see. That's what they've lied to us about. We are the creditors, we are creators, and we can create these documents, lawful documents, etc., and so on. So in effect, we are the creators.
Let me retell this story that somebody said to me, which they did. Somebody came to the door, an enforcement officer or whatever, and said, you owe us £2,000. So the guy said, oh, okay, what's it for? Okay. And what he did was he wrote on a piece of paper a promissory note. I promised to pay £2,000. Didn't write promissory note on it, just no anything, signed it, 2,000. But he wrote it out for 1,995. He put a £5 note on that, stapled it together, gave it to the guy, filmed the whole thing. And the guy at the door said, well, I can't accept this. And so he said, okay, so you've rejected the payment that I've given you. And Kaylee's nodding already. And so because they had rejected it, that meant it was discharged. Is that a thing?
According to the Bill of Exchange Act, yes.
Absolutely. Refusal is dishonourable. Dishonourable discharges the debt.
Fantastic. So,
good one.
That's you're gambling that they'll go away with £5 note, I suppose. But if you film the whole thing and they've rejected it, you've got the evidence, haven't you?
Yeah, you've won.
So that was, you see,
good.
Running a YouTube channel, people send you stuff all the time, and you go, bloody hell, what about that?
This is a good. Oh, sorry. This is why I was going to say. This is what the good part of this is when people try different things. Just try and vary so that we push the boundaries, because, as I said, this is a game of chess. And
you said that last week, which was brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, so Andy asks here, he says, I inherited my home. My brother is shared owner of the deeds, but he now lives in France. Do I still need to put the home into trust to protect it? I have nobody I can trust it to, though. We'll have it.
We'll have it. We don't mind, do we?
Bring it this way. We'll go with our pizza.
Yeah. We still got £42 in the kitty. I ought to give that to you to pay some for food at one of the roadshows.
Well, I won't worry about it, but thank you.
Well, somebody will cause
somebody
a
will
stir.
Actually, that's what. But going back to the question, so the guys in France.
The guys in France. David G's got the answer.
The Windmill Man.
The Windmill
Man. You need to research about trusts and the positions in the trust. So you've asked a question about trusts and property. This is technical, it's complicated, it takes a lot of study, so I need to paraphrase this and give you an answer of which will satisfy and be clear and transparent. So trusts, they look like this. Generally, the setup, the triangle window that we found in 2015. At the top is the king position, which would be settlor, okay, or grantor, a different language, American English, Babel, etc. But settlor is at the top. The settlor is the one that can, at a level of law, prove that they have title rights to the property to settle into the trust. So in this instance, you've mentioned property and deed. So whomever is on the deed, or actually possesses the deed, the title deed. So let's keep it simple. It has the right to put that into the trust as a res in the trust. The property can be held on trust. And then you would split the titles from the settlor. You split legal title, legal possessory title, and then equitable title. The legal possessory title is to trustee or trustees, and then the equitable title goes to the beneficiaries, of which may be offspring, family, charity. It could be held in a will on trust. So in a nutshell, if you don't have the deed, you can't really do much. You would need, if you said France, so I presume they're on another continent, so you'd have to make arrangements to mutually agree and express the trust and have that written in the indentures of the trust as such. So yes, you can.
So Dave, I don't mean to stop you in full flight, but I'm going to. I'm sorry about that. I think what the questioner has, I think they both own the house, but one of them's he's moved to France and he wants to put it into trust. So they both presumably would be the settler in that case, would they? As if they both jointly own it.
That's right, yeah. So as long as I did say whoever has the deed or names the deed, the title right to the property, so they can both. One could buy the other out, and they could just have one owner. Or they could both do it, but they both then have to make agreements as such. And I would urge that they do this not by somebody on the internet, but when it's a property, high amount, and it's important and it needs to be done correctly, lawfully. You want protection. I would in this instance not recommend going to a solicitor or somebody in the legal profession, but it would be beneficial in this instance to do it all privately. Okay, to keep the fees and the amounts down, and when you're happy with it, take it then to somebody who's validated and certified to say this is bona fide, this can be done, and we will sign off and validate it. Yeah.
And can I just ask one more question? Because he said he didn't have anyone he trusts or whatever. Can he act as a trustee as well as being, or one of them, even though they're both the grantors, can one of them act as the trustee or both of them act as the trustee and presumably beneficiary? Or is I know that.
Yes, you've asked a very technical question, and it's very hard.
Well, don't give us the 9 yards. It's just yes, they can. They can go and research it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's only because we're running out of time.
Questions.
So much pressure.
Yes, don't relax. You haven't got to be. We're not offering full advice. We're just, if we're just pointing people in the right direction, that is enough. We're opening people's minds, and they can go off and do their research, which is they've got to hold it.
Come on, get on with it. Chop.
Sorry.
The next question from David Alexander Varney. He says, I like this one. Has anyone on the panel delved into CSSCPSG? taking the jurisdiction over the language and evidencing their grammar fraud, because we've been talking about
here we go.
The words. Has anybody thought about doing that, I wonder, delving into it?
That's David Wynne Miller and Russell J. Gould, and it's allegedly a copyright language. So on the back of that, I'd advise you look into, wait, don't fail me now, Noam Chomsky, syntactic structures. Look at English syntactic structures. Look at the language itself when we talk about legalese and ecclesia and capital letters and hieroglyphics. You said right at the beginning of the show. So for my worth, there is, if you look at the Bible and the chapters and the verses in the Bible, you've got a full colon in there in between the chapter and the verse. There's nothing new. They've created, from what I understand, the late David Wynne Miller, and now it's the flame is carried by Russell J. Gould, who incidentally, when Trump was in office, in the President of America, proclaimed, Russell J. Gould, who connected with this, and Wynne Miller, proclaimed that he was the Postmaster General for America, and then a month or so later, Trump pronounced that he'd elected a new Postmaster General, and it wasn't Russell J. Gould. So I don't really like it, and I don't trust it. And there's other ways to speak and to be concise. But I'll let the panel put their views in. That's just my view.
Just to say, I have actually interviewed Russell J. Gould, and I have to say I didn't understand a word of it. But he was a very nice and polite man, but it was very depth and over my bald scalp. A number of people have put their hands up. I don't know who did it first, but let's go to David Adelman, who's just put his hand down. David.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, all I can say on this issue is that the man himself died not long ago, probably, I would say, a good few years before his time. That was David Wynne Miller. And the British equivalent, Mark Kishon, is languishing in a prison cell as we speak. So this is not a productive avenue, in my opinion. The evidence suggests, whether it's right or wrong, the actual process, who knows, and quite frankly, who cares? It doesn't seem to have happy outcomes.
Interesting. That is interesting. And Callie has her hand up. Thanks, David.
Hi. Yes. Following on from what David said, if people are interested in, obviously it's David Wynne Miller, and this is this idea of learn the serpent tongue and use it against them, you know, the legalese, the forked tongue, and it's about having 2 or more grammatical styles on the document. There's some friends of mine, the Goodism, so I'd like to give them a plug. Andy down there, they utilize a lot of this, and if people were interested in learning more of it, then I would go and seek them out. And if people are struggling to find them or find their links, they are in my network as well. Speaking as somebody else, obviously, like what David said about it not having particularly happy outcomes, I do believe that is true. It's not something that they particularly recognise, and it's dangerous to them because it's completely correct. But also, there's the Australian guy, Romney Stewart, and I think they've been chasing him down for a while, but I think they did certainly lock up his partner, who was also languishing in a jail as well at the moment. It's because it's super powerful. But if you're going to play with superpower, you better know what you're doing.
Don't use kryptonite then if you are a Superman is what you're saying. I've got a question here which has this is from Simone. Question: how can we challenge the mortgage, which is mostly all interest? Although I think we actually know that it's not just interest. It's our credit we've given them in the first place. David Adelman.
Well, something has come to mine and allegedly Dave's attention recently, I believe, that there is a statutory remedy which, I'll be honest, I've not actually used it myself because I've never had a mortgage. I've never had that level of commitment to the matrix. But it's Section 87, Law of Property Act 1925, which upon the failure by the mortgaging company to produce evidence of contract and upon execution of the correct protocols, which is notices, you can give notice of invocation of Section 87, which imposes a statutory term, and this is biblical, statutory term on the alleged contract which turns it into 3,000 years and offer, 3,000 years is 156,000 weeks. So that would be £1 or £2 a week. And that should keep you in honor with clean hands and in accordance with even their rules. So this is what I'm recommending more and more. It's a nice, clean little, no-nonsense remedy.
Mm.
And if you can survive that long to pay it off, bully for you.
If you do survive, if you do pay it off, please let me know how you live for 3,000 years.
I have one, Richard, for what it's worth, and I've seen it with my own eyes. Somebody in the family recently was granted a mortgage, the decision in principle all the way through to obtaining and purchasing a property. So I say this with first-hand knowledge. What happened in the process between the decision in principle and then the actual buying of the property, the paperwork in between, and the mortgage deed? Right, ears up, eyes down. The paperwork was sent to the mortgagee from the mortgagor via the conveyancing solicitor. Now, there should be on that paperwork signatures, signatories, and there should be witnesses. But the conveyancing solicitor quite often sends the paperwork through the post and asks the mortgagor to sign it, and they put little stickers all over the paperwork, sign here, sign here, sign here, return to the office. But they should be witnessed. So there are also remedies for indemnification for this process via ways of pointing out that the actual mortgage itself was not done correctly in front of witnesses, technicalities as well as the 1925 Law of Property Act. And there's quite a few ways to point this out, but you're playing with fire. I'm not advising anybody do this, or they need to recognise what they are doing and how they're doing it, because you could end up losing your property and becoming homeless. You could end up making moves of which. So I'm just saying that this process is fraudulent in many ways. It's deceptive, and it's not done verbatim and in accordance with the practice directions, the financial banking, and so forth and so on. So there are ways to get indemnification, and there are ways to point out that certain prerequisites and processes were not satisfied at the time, which would lie with, and then you need to be prepared and think the whole way through before you ever start doing something like this. I'd just like to say so.
It's a very sensible point. Allegedly, Dave.
Right, well, I happen to have a video out at the moment called The Great Big Mortgage Caper. And as David just said, there's, there are a few procedural errors that you can sort of look at. But I really like to focus on the massive amount of fraud behind a mortgage. Right, so, and there's like... if you get £100,000 mortgage, the bank makes something around 1.8 million, right, whether you pay it back or not. Right? So
wow,
yeah. So there's a massive amount of fraud. So in that video, I show how you can nail down the truth about this fraud into an absolutely kind of bulletproof format. And so you take that and you put that in your back pocket, and you've got I propose 4 different ways that you can sort of proceed from that, always having the truth in your back pocket, so that they can't really come back at you, because you've got the truth that you can just like wave in front of them and say you've agreed to this is the truth, and you've agreed to it, right? So one of the ways, and it's been mentioned earlier on, is the promissory note. It's not the way I prefer it, because why give them anything when they've never given you anything, in the beginning? But one of the beauty of that is that the mortgage itself is based on a promissory note.
Yes.
So if you pay it off with a promissory note, they can't really argue, because it's the same instrument that created the loan in the first place. So-called.
Yes.
And so far, I've had 2 people say that they've paid their mortgage off with a promissory note. One person said they've got it official, zeroed out. I'm waiting for confirmation on that, though.
Let us know, huh?
And if they give them a promissory note and they accept it, can the bank or the mortgage lender use that promissory note, securitize it, put it on the what's the name, and make money from it. Doesn't matter to the other bloke because he's
absolutely. That's exactly what they do.
right.
There's actually something you can actually look up. It's called the Carmel Butler Memorandum.
The what? Sorry.
The Carmel Butler Memorandum. Now, this was an MP basically did a sort of bit of a deep dive on the banking situation after the 2008 crash. They basically wanted to know what was going on with this 2008 crash, and this MP basically reveals that a lot of the fraud that was going on, including the fact that when the bank sells the promissory note to what they call an SPV, special purpose vehicle, so it's a company that's investing in these promissory notes, well, nobody's told about it. Now, the person, the mortgagor, I can never get that right. Mortgagor doesn't get told about the fact that the bank is no longer the holder of the debt as such. Right. All right. They're not told, nor is land registry, which is also a red flag, right? Because that's against the law. So the bank is now just an administrator for the ones that the special purpose vehicle that have bought the promissory note, right? And they're acting as basically an agent, just passing on the money, right? So, but they're pretending that they are still the holder of the mortgage. Again, that's against the law. So there are lots of avenues here against the mortgage. The only thing is, I'm sorry to hog this, but the only thing is that this has been the bread and butter of this system. This has been the millstone that's been around everyone's neck for generations, and they want to keep it. Or I think they're trying to get away from it with a student loan, but they wanted to keep this. So there's a court case that happened in 1969 in America, which affects us too. It essentially nullified every single mortgage on the face of the earth.
Wow. And nobody knows.
Nobody knows. It's still on the books. You can go and find it yourself. It's known as the Credit River decision. Okay, you look out from that, and essentially what happened to that, which is the reason why nobody knows about it, is that they ended up murdering the judge in a very public and obvious way.
Oh, blimey! Yeah.
So don't get any ideas,
dicey. You are being a bit dicey with that.
Yeah. So the defendant in the case was a guy called Jerome Daly. He was a lawyer, and once his case was basically won his case, him and the judge started freeing other people from their mortgages.
Wow.
Oh, so then they murdered the judge and they disbarred Jerome Daly. So he couldn't couldn't practice anymore.
Oh my God.
And just going back to that thing you said about paying with the promissory note to pay off the mortgage, it just suddenly struck me. You've given them a promissory note, which was the first agreement. Then you're writing another promissory note. So if you're having a house for, I don't know, £250,000 or something, you've actually given them £500,000, which they can securitize and do all that. Yeah. But you walk away from it without actually putting.
But again, I've told you they already make like something like 1.8 million on 100,000. Right. So,
doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. We're just coming up to 10 minutes left on the show.
I've got one question.
Yep.
May I? It's quite a long to read it question. Okay, but it was emailed to me earlier and it's anonymous. So
is it a question that we all can go and make a cup of tea whilst you're reading it?
It depends on the answer, really.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Depends on the answer. I can read it quite quickly because it's got commas in it.
Nice.
So I live in a tied property. The house comes with a job, i.e. tied. I've lived here for 2.5 years and have not paid any utilities in this time. I had a letter from the electricity yesterday in the name of the owner, which is my boss. Obviously got it from the land
landlord,
registry.
Presumably.
Yeah, because it's tied, so the job goes with the house.
Like a farmer.
Yeah, or I cannot let my boss get involved. I could lose my home and my job.
Yeah.
I don't really want to contact and make joinder with the electricity scoundrels, but I need them to remove my employer's name. Thanks, you wonderful lot.
Get on and answer that one.
Yeah, sort that one out. Stick that in your pipe.
So you're in a Thai cottage. It's obviously in the landlord's name, but they're writing to you.
Yeah, to me, to them,
to pay the bill.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to. He doesn't want to.
And unless the landlord's on the game with you.
Yeah, wide awake. So how does that happen?
Young allegedly Dave.
Allegedly Dave.
In the deep, dark studio.
Yes.
And he's muted. So we can't. Late night with Dave. So late.
It's a close one between me and David Adelman now. I'm not sure I should take this, but yeah. So in this case, they are fishing, right? So they don't know who's there, right, at the property. So they're fishing. They got some details off probably land registry, and they're sending to that address. With that name, hoping that they get a reply, because if they don't get a reply, the next letters are going to be to the occupier.
I see,
and so on. So now either they can actually tough it out, because they don't get a response, they'll default to the occupier. Remember, these are robots. Okay.
Yes.
Or you could answer it and and to say I'm or use your name. My name is Dave Mark, Dave dash Mark colon. Yeah, that's doesn't give away anything, but it's me. So they can't really go really further with that. They can start, you can start a process with them, but they haven't got a handle on you as such.
Because you haven't given proper jurisdiction.
You haven't given them joinder. And the first in my process, the first paragraph and the first request for evidence is basically saying something like, this is this addressed to me, Dave Mark, or a person called Dave Murphy, or somebody called the occupier or something. Just to clarify things, but then you can start the process to and keep it to you rather than risk it going to to a landlord. But as I said, at the moment they haven't got your landlord's name. They're using that as like bait, fishing bait. So it's always going to come to that address.
Does GDPR come into this as well? Because how have the electricity, from the electoral roll, but are they allowed to do that?
May I just say that you can reply by saying you're the executive in office if you're struggling to not want to create joinder, or you could even say I am the data controller on behalf of, and you can act as the data controller for your person. As simple as that.
Could you be the fat controller?
Well, I don't know there, Thomas.
I could at the moment.
and people have said, that it's a promissory note regards a mortgage. It's actually a securitized instrument, a security instrument, and as you've created it, you own it. I'm not going to get into it all now, but I'd argue that it isn't necessarily a promissory note. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. David Adelman had his finger up. I'm not telling you where, but he had it up.
It wasn't his nose, was it?
No. Hastily withdrawn it. If you are going to engage, I like Dave's answer that basically keep a low profile and just see what happens. But if you are going to engage, ask them whether this is a statement or an invoice. And if it's a statement, then thank them for the information, because that's all statements are, just up-to-date information. And if it's an invoice, then ask them in regard of what is it, what is it regarding? An invoice for the provision of what?
Yes.
Well, I mean, because they operate, that when we read something, we don't read fact. We create presumptions in our own mind.
Yes.
So we have to do a bit of an internal audit in our own mind, and give our heads a wobble and say, well, wait a minute, am I actually being invoiced for something tangible, or is this part of the mind game known as the Matrix. What's going on? So
another question. Do that again, David.
Do that again.
Do it again. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Somebody could just edit that out.
Preposterous.
Turn it into a sting. That would be lovely.
I've got to read this. Okay, I think if we're going to end soon, because we said keep repeating.
Yes.
So this one comes from Time Goes By 12.
Time goes by.
Does anyone have an antidote for notices? I became addicted 6 months ago and I can't stop.
What do you mean by an antidote? What, for writing them?
Yeah, obviously
or
they're
collecting
writing.
them?
It's a joke.
No,
It's a joke.
Yeah. But it keeps coming up like every 10th line. So there you go. Time goes by, it's gone.
Well, the obvious one is to get a life.
Move to the private.
There's a message to you, actually, the People's Lawyer. Thanks to David Adelman, I became addicted to notices 6 months ago, and I can't stop.
It's your fault.
This is defamation. This is defamation. I think we need to close the channel.
Yes.
And I'd say enjoy playing, because have fun with these notices, because
I think this guy is.
Just to close down, something that hasn't been mentioned is if you want to research why notices are important, why notices are better than telephone and email, is because somebody, I'll let you find this out, is quoted as saying, at the heart of equity lies the doctrine of notices. So you research that in the public domain, and that will lead you on a journey as well as to why we use, and we would say that they are the way to communicate, and they compel people to perform rather than you wondering or waiting or spending lots of time chasing your tail, sending letters and complaining are kind of useless, and you are not compelling the other party to perform. So compulsion, for even in their fiduciary capacity, so they can't disclaim their duties, is why notices are effective. But notices need to be done correctly, and you can retain your rights with them, and the reason they work is because they lie at the heart of equity. Equity is the other channel of common law, which is only just in the last 10 years become apparent through the fusion of equity within the 1876 Adjudicator Act. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very much close to the end of the show, so I think that's probably all the questions. I was just looking.
They are coming in, but
they're coming in thick and fast. And the trouble is, everybody does the questions right at the end. If the government are not working in our best interests in creating a danger to the public, can we remove them Can we remove them without force? Yes or no? Anybody? Allegedly, Dave. Sorry, Gill. Kaylee.
That literally does mean mind control, doesn't it? From the Latin gubernare, to control and men's the mind. Now, he who creates owns. So I'll say that again, because we created government, not the other way around. So our status as legal fictions is below them. But when we realise and act as sovereign, as living men and women from the private, then we take our status higher than them again.
So is that a yes?
Knowing who we are. So yes, in effect.
Yes.
It's followed
and
by
the
a when.
parish councils have the power to do that. Through the parish councils, we can actually have the power to call a referendum. And obviously, we don't vote these people in. We have the illusion of voting them in.
Yes.
The red and the blue are just, the same wings on the, two wings on
and
the
green.
same bird.
I would say no, because any solution within the system is there to keep the system as it is. I believe it's going to come to, at some point, the people forcing the issue, because we're on a runaway train. It seems like that they're going ahead, barreling ahead with all these UN sustainability goals and stuff, and they will continue to do that until they are removed. I mean, physically removed.
And it's
that's it.
Banking, isn't it, David? Ultimately, it's banking. If people want to really understand what's going on, understand economics, understand banking, because they're just running. The banks are just agents, and the bank is the city of London. See judge, see postmaster, see banker. It's banking, it's commerce. I mean, just out of interest, just to finish off, I won't go on a huge rant, but
Thanks.
like everything runs on generally accepted accounting principles. So when you look, it's called GAAP. And GAAP was a Sumerian demon, the Bar, who still run the City of London, and the Gala, they were the ancient Sumerian demons who dragged the dead to the underworld. This is a spiritual war, so it's bang on what Dave says. In the end, all their systems are their systems, and it is just more about, know thyself and remembering who we are and taking it back that way.
So, pitchforks, get your pitchforks all sharpened up, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't say that. Don't hold that to me. That's an alleged expression. We have come to the end of another exciting show, full of wonderful questions, lovely answers, and magnificently dressed and attired Cleverclogs. And if you go to a live show, you will see a hillbilly dance routine of them in clogs, which will be very entertaining indeed. That is part of the contract, which is shrivelling as we speak. Big... One's got to thank you to everybody who's taken part as we come to the end. A quick, if there's
a minute each,
just to promote yourselves and where you can be seen, or websites or whatever, please jot them down on bits of paper. I'm sorry we cannot send your letters back at the end of the day unmarked. So, Callie, as you're there, give us a quick 1 minute promotion of what you do and where they can find you.
So you can find me at www.datmatters.contact and on my podcast on YouTube as well. And like I say, we do all kinds of things. It's free to join. You can come and find me there.
You're a star. Brilliant. Look at that. That was like 10 seconds. Brilliant. Allegedly, Dave.
Beat that.
Right. Well, I'm still doing my tour around the country. I'm going to the Midlands and up through to Scotland. You'll find details at allegedlydave.com, and you'll find somewhere on the front page it'll say the tour, and you can click and find all the dates. That's it.
When you just quickly, when you go on your tour, do people come and say, "Oh, we saw you on this show"?
Yes, and I'm getting a lot of emails from people who say. In fact, I've got an email from the one who asked a question about mortgages already.
Ah, fantastic. That'll keep you busy all night. Over to David G.
Okay, thank you. It's been excellent.
1 minute.
Yep, there it is. Look, it's there. I've changed it so they can just type SPLS Pro. Bosh, do that on a search engine. You will get links to our private domain, our public domain, the Facebook. Go to my channel, Indie Glow. I'm in the chat room as Indie Glow. So if you click on that or just go to Indie Glow, then in the video descriptions, there are all links and the appropriate information you require. And I'm looking forward to having a show with Callie on her channel very, very soon to promote and see what we can do there. Thank you once again, Richard, and everybody else. It's been a privilege and an honour.
Fantastic, brilliant. It's lovely to have you. And David Adelman is next.
Yeah, thank you. Just website. People can. The best thing to do is to find me at thepeopleslawyeruk.com, and if they're more interested in schooling and reasons to pull from a boy or girl from school, then they'll get access to the book, which is linked via the website. Loads of resources on the website. Pretty much all of them are free, but if they want to take their investment or take their journey further and deeper, they can invest in my online course. I'm also on tour till we win the war is my slogan. Not quite as busy as I was during lockdown because people think it's all over, but it's not. The storm is upon us, so people need to bear that in mind. I'd just like to, just a final thought, 3 contradictions in terms for people to take away. 1 is life-saving vaccines, 2 is school education, and 3 is legal obligation. All those 3, for different reasons, are contradiction in terms. And
oxymorons.
Oxymorons, yeah. And just thought I'd leave that on a whimsical note. But thank you, everyone. Very enjoyable today, as ever. This is a great panel. And,
thank you so much.
And thank you, Richard and Karen, for hosting and making it all possible.
It's lovely to have you on board. And finally, Gill.
I'm just at grassroots. I don't have a website or anything. I'm just
not yet, Gill. I'm working on it, love.
But is it right that you're appearing at one of the shows?
Yes, that's right. I'll be at Hope Sussex, so it'll be lovely to see some.
And you'll be at Glastonbury.
And at Glastonbury.
I will be at Glastonbury as well. making a tea.
So there we go. So if you want a nice bag of tea, go and have a word with Gill, which is great.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks very much, everyone.
That's
Brilliant.
right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it just remains me to thank the lovely Julia. If you could just be a bit
Karen.
quiet in the panel for a
Quiet,
second.
yes, clogs.
A big thanks to Julia, who's been sitting there moderating in the chat room and pulling some of the questions out to me. Big thanks to Karen, whose idea this was. It's like saying thanks to Ian Messiter. Do you remember Just a Minute?
Oh, yes.
And Nicholas Parsons would always thank Ian Messiter, who died, and he kept thanking him as if he was next to him inside. But sadly, even the host of Just a Minute, Nicholas Parsons, has dropped dead as well.
Suddenly?
I don't know. It was well before the COVID nonsense. A precursor.
But do you also want to thank everybody that knows you and all that kind of stuff?
No, I don't want to thank anybody else.
Okay.
Just the lovely audience for tuning in, of course, who've been absolute stars, and to all the panel and everybody else. But in the meantime, now we got another show next week.
We've got another show next week on Thursday, and then we're jumping to Friday.
Right.
So because some of the Cleverclogs are doing their own thing on a Thursday, so we've just given, occasionally we throw a Friday in. And also, if you do want to find your tribe, do go onto the freedomnetwork.co.uk, the website freedomnetwork.co.uk, and you'll find your hubs in the local areas where you can grow your tribe and do whatever it is you need to do. We all know what we need to do now, don't we?
We do.
So you want to find like-minded people, go onto the website, and if there isn't one in your area, you'll be directed to me, and I'll just put you on the map, and Bob's your uncle. Off you go.
Good old Bob. He gets about, doesn't he? So that's it from us. Thank you so much for watching. Keep smiling, keep enjoying yourself. Watch out for the, as I was told this morning, the emergency broadcast that might be coming in a few months' time. So who knows?
Exciting.
You might have some surprises up the sleeve. But anyway, that's it from us. I've got to find out how to turn this off. I think there's a button here. And take care. All the best.